If your steering feels loose or makes a clunk, don't ignore it. A lot of car problems are annoying. Steering problems are different because they affect your control of the vehicle. If you feel a clunk in the steering wheel, a weird dead spot, or the wheel doesn't feel connected to the tires the way it used to, one sneaky part can be the reason: the intermediate steering shaft. It's not as famous as a tie rod or power steering pump, but when it wears out, it can make the car feel sketchy fast. In this video, we're going to be talking about symptoms of a bad intermediate steering shaft. It's the Car Problems YouTube channel. Subscribe, and let's get started. Before the symptoms, here's what the intermediate steering shaft actually does. Your steering wheel doesn't bolt directly to the steering rack. Between them sits the intermediate steering shaft, a short linkage that carries your hand movement down through the firewall to the rack or steering box. It uses one or two universal joints to handle angles, plus a telescoping slip joint that collapses in a crash. That slip also lets the column move with the body, while the rack stays on the subframe. When these joints wear or dry out, the feel at the wheel changes quickly. When those joints wear, bind, or develop play, you feel it right in your hands. Symptom 1. Clunking or knocking in the steering column. This is the most common complaint. You turn the wheel slightly left and right, especially at low speed or when parking, and you feel or hear a clunk. It can sound like it's under the dash, in the column, or right at the firewall. What's happening is usually free play in the slip joint or wear in a U-joint. The steering input takes up that slack with a knock before it actually moves the rack. Symptom 2. A dead spot or looseness around center. If you turn the steering wheel a little and the car doesn't respond immediately, that's a red flag. Some play is normal in older vehicles, but a sudden change or a noticeable dead zone around center can be the intermediate shaft developing slack. To a newbie driver, it feels like the car is wandering and you're constantly making tiny corrections. At highway speeds, that can be tiring and unsafe. Symptom 3. Steering that feels notchy, stiff, or sticks in one direction. This surprises people. A bad intermediate shaft doesn't always feel loose. If a U-joint starts to rust or bind, the steering can feel notchy, like it catches as you turn. In worse cases, the wheel may not return smoothly to center after a turn. This is common in areas with road salt or in vehicles that have had water intrusion near the steering linkage. Binding steering isn't something to live with. It can get worse quickly. Symptom 4. Vibration in the steering wheel over bumps. If the intermediate shaft has play, road shocks can travel back through the steering system and you feel a rattle or vibration in the wheel when you hit bumps. This can be confused with suspension issues. Here's the clue. Suspension problems often shake the whole car and usually change with speed. Intermediate shaft play often feels like a sharper tap or rattle right in the steering wheel, especially on rough pavement at low to medium speeds. Symptom 5. Squeaking, rubbing, or clicking noises near the firewall. Some intermediate shafts squeak as the slip joint moves. Others click as worn splines shift. You may hear it inside the cabin, especially with the window down driving slowly near a wall. If the noise is right when you turn the steering wheel and seems to come from the steering column area rather than a wheel bearing or suspension, the shaft and its joints deserve a close look. What else can mimic these symptoms? Tie rods, ball joints, strut mounts, sway bar links, and even loose subframe bolts can cause clunks. A steering rack can also have internal play. That's why a real diagnosis matters. A mechanic usually checks for play at the wheels first, then checks the steering column and shaft while someone turns the wheel slightly back and forth. If the shaft moves but the rack input doesn't immediately follow, you've found slack. Why intermediate shafts fail? The most common causes are wear in the U-joints, lack of lubrication, corrosion from moisture and salt, and normal mileage. Some vehicles also have known issues with the slip joint developing play. If the car has been in a front-end collision or the steering column has been disturbed, the shaft can also be damaged or misaligned. Cost to fix. In many cars, replacing the intermediate steering shaft is a moderate labor job. The part cost varies by vehicle, and labor depends on access under the dash and in the engine bay. Many repairs land in the few hundred range, but some can be higher on vehicles with tighter packaging or if the shaft is only available as a more expensive OEM assembly. You also want an alignment check afterward if any steering components were loosened, and you absolutely want the steering wheel centered properly when everything is reassembled.